plea Jeffrey Bleich to the lectern.
Thank you, Alex. The Honourable Ms. Julia Gillard, Prime Minister of Australia, and Mr. Tim Matheson, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners of over 70 countries, the Honourable Mr. Tony Abbott, Leader of the Opposition, Ms. Katie Gallagher, the Chief Minister of the Australian Capital Territory, General David Hurley, Chief of the Australian Defence Forces, and Mrs. Linda Hurley, members of Parliament of the Commonwealth, Chiefs of the Australian Defence Force Services, senior members of the Australian Public Service, members of Australian First Responder Services, and welcome to our visiting international dignitary, the Honourable Mr. Peter MacKay, the Canadian Minister of National Defence. Distinguished guests, one and all, friends and family from many nations. We come together today to remember a terrible day, and the weather has certainly cooperated in doing so. But we remember even more the days that have followed and that will follow. It has been 10 years since September 11. The world that we imagined on September 10, 2011, all changed utterly in just 24 hours. That morning of 9/11, thousands of men and women, Americans, Australians, people of dozens of nationalities, Christians, Muslims, Jews, awoke thinking that it was a normal day. In New York City, they headed to work in the World Trade Towers. In Boston and Newark and D.C., they rushed off to the airport to catch the next flight to San Francisco. In New York, firefighters and police officers, men and women, kissed their spouses or partners goodbye as they left for the station. They all had their plans for that day, their meetings, who they'd see at lunch, friends, acquaintances, errands with children. The world they imagined that morning, like the life they imagined, was one filled with many more days and years. They assumed life in all its fullness, whatever that life was. The ideals they held, the religion they practiced, the people they chose as their friends, their political views, the words they chose to say. You know, we don't often refer to these things as freedom of religion or freedom of speech, freedom of association or equality or liberty. We just call it living. We call it life. And likely so did the people on that day. But that casual belief changed on September 11. These men and women, sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, were killed that day for simply living as they did and where they did. People from over 90 nations were killed because they chose to live in a land that celebrated these values. For those of us who survived, it was also a day that we never imagined. Wherever we were, in countries around the world, we imagined a normal day as well. None of us expected the world to stop and for us to watch in horror as people just like us, perished before our very eyes in flames and ash and rubble. Faced suddenly with a world that we'd never imagined, the stark question for each of us to answer was this: what do we do now? If people like us were going to be killed for living as we did, what would we do now? One of the people asking this very question was my college roommate, Jeff Thompson. Jeff and his girlfriend lived in New York, where he worked in finance and sometimes went on the road to play music. On September 11, he was at work on one of the top floors of the second tower when the first plane hit Tower 1 of the World Trade Center. Seeing the destruction next door, he started downstairs, but no one followed. He was about halfway down the tower when the second plane hit, just above him, cutting off all of his colleagues, everyone he knew from work. The stairwells filled with people as they marched down to get out of the building, while firefighters and police struggled to get up. Jeff was barely out of the tower when it all collapsed behind him. He was covered in dust and blood and tears. There were no phones that day, no cars, no way to get home to his flat except to walk. And so he walked. He walked 18 miles back to his apartment. And when he arrived, his girlfriend was home mourning his death. When she opened that door, Jeff, who was covered in dust, looked like a ghost to her, and the two of them just stood there crying. And then he dropped to one knee and he asked her to marry him. That is how he answered the question. In the days and the years since, they've married. They have a son. Jeff has left the glamorous lifestyle of high finance and show business for a quiet life in a small town where he teaches math. He's committed to the things that matter most to him: his wife, his child, his community, and to educating the next generation. He can never make sense of that day, and he'll never be able to accept why he was spared when so many other good people perished. But in the days and the weeks that have followed, he's rededicated himself to doing the things they might have done if they had lived, living a free and good life. Each day since that terrible day offers each of us the chance to do good things that help others. In the face of the question of September 12th, the question of what do we do now, there's no answer other than we will be better. In the 10 years since September 11, survivors of terrorism around the world have struggled just as Jeff has to understand what happened and why, and how to stop it from happening again. Free people have come together across this globe, from New York to Nairobi, from Bali to Belfast, from Mumbai to Manila, from Lahore to London, and many other places, and many other nations afflicted by terrorism. We've all been more careful at our borders. We've been more aware in our intelligence. We've been more aggressive in our response to terror. But we've been more than that. We have looked inward, and we have looked outward. We've been more inclusive of religions, learning each other's traditions, hosting iftars together, celebrating Ramadan, renewing our commitment to religious tolerance. We shared our thoughts and our hopes and our beliefs even more freely in our political processes. We innovated, and we built new ways to communicate. Social media that connected us to more people around the world than was ever before possible in human history. We made more friends. We invested more in our alliances, invested more in our communities. We gave more aid. We supported more charities. We welcomed new nations into this world like South Sudan. And we celebrated the spirit of democracy among the people of Tunisia and other nations in this Arab Spring. And we fought even harder against the agents of hate and fear and intolerance wherever they lived. Tens of thousands of us have served this cause, often putting our lives at risk in difficult and dangerous places. We've lost some of our best and our bravest men and women. And all of us have invested billions of dollars to save the world from killers like Osama bin Laden and the others who follow his sick beliefs. The terrorists wanted us to respond in terror, to be afraid to live as we had and to believe as we did. But in the 10 years that have followed, we have done just the opposite. We went back into our office buildings. We got back into our airplanes. We came together in our temples and churches and mosques. We lined up at our ballot boxes. We volunteered to serve our nations, and we gathered publicly, as we do right now, without fear, whether it's to enjoy a football game or a concert or a barbecue. And we came together each day this year, each day, each year, on this day, to remember those who were lost and to rededicate ourselves to their memory. So today, members of the embassy didn't mourn. They went to the Arboretum and they planted new trees to make the world cleaner and more beautiful. They ran around Lake Burley Griffin to raise money to help those suffering from heart disease. We joined with our Australian friends to volunteer at homeless shelters and with organizations throughout this city to live the principles and the freedoms that we cherish. Around the world, we resisted the natural instinct of people in their attack to withdraw and to close off. Our response has been to reach out and to embrace. Confronted with hate, we choose not to hate. Confronted with death, we choose to live. Confronted with fear, we choose to hope. And we have all done, as Jeff did 10 years ago tonight. Faced with unimaginable fear and death, he kneeled to pledge his faith in love. Thank you. We weathered the storms and the rain, and before we head home tonight, I want to offer a few final words of appreciation. First, from the President of the United States, and then from all of us. First, from President Obama. The President has asked me to share the following letter that he delivered today to the Prime Minister. It's one of only 3 letters that he has prepared on the commemoration of September 11th. Dear Prime Minister, as we approach the 10th anniversary of the September 11 attacks, I want to take this opportunity to express our enduring appreciation for the close partnership and support that we have received from Australia on that fateful day and in the decades since. Australia's support on September 11, 2001 and in the days after was extraordinary. Prime Minister Howard was in Washington on September 11, preparing to address a joint session of Congress on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of our alliance. While this address had to be postponed, his heartfelt words of support and sympathy on that day and in the days and weeks that followed eloquently described the depth of the United States-Australia partnership. Australia's quick declaration that these attacks were an assault on the values and freedoms shared by our 2 countries comforted us. Your invocation of Article 4 of the ANZUS Treaty strengthened our resolve to prevail over this menace. Americans were moved by the expressions of sympathy from so many Australians, and we shared your grief at the loss of 10 Australians in the September 11 attacks. In the decades since the attacks, we have had no more steadfast partner than Australia in our efforts to defeat terrorists in Afghanistan, in Bali, in the Middle East, and in Southeast Asia. Australia's robust cooperation in these efforts has made a tremendous contribution to achieving the alliance goals we share and has won the lasting affection and gratitude of Americans. As the United States and Australia stand on the cusp of our alliance's 7th decade, I assure you I will continue to do everything I can to work with you to deepen that partnership, to ensure security for our nations, our citizens, now and in the future. Sincerely, Barack Obama. Barack Obama nominated me on September 11th to serve in this post. And so on behalf of my family, I'm grateful that he has helped turn a date marked only by sadness for us into one of hope and resolve and the chance to serve our nation. So on behalf of all of us, President Obama, Becky and I and our kids, and all of the people of the United States, we offer the following special thanks to our friends here in Australia. First, thank you, Prime Minister Gillard, for your inspiring and moving words. We thank you personally, and we thank the government of Australia for your steadfast support and for championing the values that keep us strong and free. We thank the National Capital Authority for allowing us to gather at this beautiful location for our commemoration tonight. We're all privileged to be here among friends, among the flags that represent our many nations. Thank you, Alex Sloan, our MC, for so skillfully leading us through today's events. I want to thank Commissioner Crossweller and Cadet Burry and the many first responders and volunteers who joined us here tonight. We thank you for coming, but even more, we thank you for choosing to devote your time and your energies to the service of others. Thank you to the AFP Flag Party, which was led by Sergeant Dale DJC Cooper. We thank Pipe Major Commander Dina Kinsman and the AFP Pipe and Drums, and my good friends, Major Jeffrey Gray, CSM, and the band of the Royal Military College Duntroon for your stirring performances. And thank you to our many, many dignitaries who are here tonight. But finally and most importantly, thank you to every person who came here tonight. Your presence honors those who perished and those who have survived and who have served. But your presence is more than that. It is a statement of who we are. Those who perpetrated this crime hope to destroy us where we are strong, in our faith in one another and in our belief that freedom and trust will ultimately make us all safer and stronger. By coming here tonight, you show that they failed. We aren't deterred. We aren't terrorized and distrustful. We come together today without fear. We stand here now openly, publicly, proudly, in full view, and we stand here together. This moment, for every one of us, is a victory. So as we return home to our houses tonight for dinner, let's try to remember this feeling of common purpose and work together to pass on all that's precious to us. Ladies and gentlemen, good night, and thank you for coming.